Also got some information coming at you from Tom Murphy here of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and Whole Hog Sports. Tom, we'll start with Phil Steele's selection. Jalen Catalon, Grant Morgan, both second-teamers, and then you have Treylon Burks as a first-team All-American. Tom, in your opinion, what do those guys have to do this season to live up to preseason expectations?
Well, let's see. Grant Morgan can duplicate 12 tackles a game. He could earn those honors again. If you do it against all SEC competition, you should be able to do it against a 12-game roster, 12-game schedule. And Burks, I mean, that's high status right there for Treylon Burks.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy like Phil Steele, breaks down the tape, sees him getting open against Georgia, scoring a touchdown in the season-opening game against the tough defense. The great one-handed catch against Ole Miss, basically not the game winner. Morgan's interception return was the game winner, but that was a huge touchdown for Arkansas. I'm not having you settle for a field goal. If I remember, that was a third-down play. And then Catalon, we all know what he's capable of. He's just got to watch out for the hits he delivers. I think both of his ejections for targeting calls were borderline, were very, very close. Especially the LSU one, and boy, that made a huge difference in that game. I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but we know what Jalen Catalon is capable of. Just a great student of the game, diagnoses what's happening, and is quick to the ball, and just a phenomenal safety that Arkansas hasn't had in years and years.
Tom, there's going to be a lot of bracketing, a lot of double coverage on Treylon Burks this year, and I think without the speed and the deep threat of Mike Woods on this roster, you're going to have some question marks what second and third guy is going to step up. How is Treylon going to be able to combat that this year when all eyes are going to be on him, especially since this isn't the first accolade he's going to receive heading into the season?
Well, obviously SEC teams knew about him last year, and it helped to have Mike Woods on the other side. So there's going to have to be some Jaquelin's going to have to step up. They're going to have to manifest some speed on the other side of the field. They're going to have to be very good at finding and exploiting matchups, running him from the slot, splitting him out wide. And, Trey Knox has got to improve his game. He's got to be able to get open. And then if you have a balanced running attack where safeties have to honor that some, then that gives Burks more of a chance to get open. And the tight ends have to be dynamic. I think if Kern and Henry have good seasons, that's just another way to pull some coverage away from Burks. But even Burks is a go up and get the ball guy. He's a high point guy. He's a wide body who can screen you out and catch passes in tight windows. So, there's a lot that's going to have to go into him having a big season. They're going to have to protect well, and KJ Jefferson's going to have to be on his game. And that's the biggest single factor on whether Arkansas makes a step up this year is if KJ Jefferson makes improvements and becomes a quality SEC starting quarterback.
And I think to get to bowl eligibility, to get these three players we kind of led with Burks, Morgan, and Catalon on some postseason All-American lists, you're going to have to be at 6 or 7 wins at least, win some key SEC games, and I don't think you can do that unless these three guys play in 12 games. They've got to be healthy all year, and that's been a challenge for Morgan. That's always the challenge in the SEC, Tom, is durability.
Yeah, there's no question about that. It is. And, people talk about Burks' per-game stuff, and it was like 91.1 yard, but they forget there was one game, and I don't remember, I think it was the first home game back after Auburn, or maybe it was the Auburn game. He basically had one catch, and I think his knee was acting up on him. And so he basically did all his damage in 9 games. He missed an entire game, I think, and then had the one game that he played very little in. So he did it in 8 games. Mm-hmm. And then we know that Morgan missed the finale against Alabama. It's a really good thing that his knee injury against Missouri wasn't worse than it was, because if it had been, who knows, he might have missed part of this coming season. So obviously Arkansas is one of those teams that you don't want to have to go too deep into your depth chart because you're going to start dropping off some, and they know they have to improve that but their frontline guys have got to deliver. And I think you're right. If they don't win 6 or 7 games, then nobody's going to make postseason teams,
right?
Because those teams just tend to get dismissed. And you'd have to have, if you're Treylon Burks, you'd have to have 70, 80 catches, 12, 13 touchdowns. And I don't know if he's going to do that, but it goes along with team accomplishments, the individual stuff.
Well, and the smartest minds in college football are the defensive coordinators. Smartest defensive minds in college football are defensive coordinators in this league, and they'll figure out a way to bracket Burks. They're obviously going to have their best secondary defenders on him, so it just puts more pressure on Knox and Warren, and somebody else has got to be a target if Burks is going to have anything close to the numbers you just kind of rattled off there a minute ago.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, and I forgot to mention Devion Warren, but hopefully he comes back really well from the knee, maintains his speed. He had a breakout game in the Auburn game, and I was so happy for the kid because he'd been through a lot. I remember a game at Mississippi State. They tried some flanker screen or something, and it didn't go well. I think he fumbled it or just something, and just got put in some tough positions. But he broke out against Auburn last year, and then I was so frustrated. I probably said it on your air before, but returning kickoffs in the Florida game, I just didn't think, they weren't getting very far with them. And if you fair catch, you start on the 25. And I think it was a non-contact deal he got hurt on against Florida, but hated to see that. Yeah, if his speed is back, he can obviously attract defenders. And then Jaquaylin Crawford, who I mentioned earlier, great speed. He's got to be able to catch the ball. So all those things could play into whether Treylon Burks maintains or improves his stats.
Tom, let's change the conversation over to basketball. Big 12 SEC announces the teams yesterday. Arkansas gets West Virginia. First time since '95 that Huggy Bear will be traveling to Fayetteville, Arkansas, to Bud Walton Arena. When you saw the announcement, what were your initial thoughts of Arkansas getting paired up with the Mountaineers?
Tough game. I think Florida went in there and beat them last year, but they are a quality program. Huggins, colorful character, obviously a classic. I remember years ago, his Cincinnati team, when I covered Bama, they played them in one of these, Puerto Rico or Hawaii somewhere. And Mike at half court, there wasn't much of a crowd. You could hear everything Huggins said. Let me tell you, it was blue, y'all. It was colorful, and you could hear it all. And they might have to reconsider if they ever do that again. But, man, I think it's going to be a quality game. I think it's going to be an intense game. West Virginia brings it.
Other matchups, you got Baylor against Alabama, the two number ones in each conference last year. Oklahoma and Auburn's intriguing. Kentucky and Kansas, the Blue Bloods, and then Tennessee at Texas. Tom, of the other games in this Big 12 SEC Challenge, what are you most intrigued by?
Man, all of those sound really good, and it seems like they always like to match up Kentucky and Kansas, the two Ks, and then in this case you got the two Ts, Tennessee, Texas. That's a good one. And then Baylor, I mean, what are they going to look like defending their title? And the same with Bama. I mean, Bama lost some guys, but they seem to have a quality program, one of those analytics-driven deals that take threes and shoot layups, get to the free throw line. And Eric Musselman runs a pretty similar deal. So that's going to be a great game as well.
Yeah. Hey, yesterday Dave Van Horn met with the media via Zoom and kind of wrapped up the season, kind of the end of year wrap up, and spent a lot of time talking about formulating next year's roster, the draft being a little bit later, creating some challenges there, looking at JUCO. What were some of your takeaways from Dave's thoughts yesterday on the past season and looking ahead to how to formulate the roster for 2022?
40 minutes with Dave Van Horn is so enlightening.
It is.
You come away a lot more knowledgeable, about what he's thinking, and he pretty much lays it out there. You guys know that. He says what's on his mind. I had the honor of getting the first question, and to me, it's the roster makeup. How do you plug in your signees, and who comes from among your signees, and then who's coming back? I mean, if they could get Brady Slavens back, and Matt Goodhart, and then add those to the guys are back, like Moore and Wallace and Welch and Bates, and you start looking at a pretty good roster. But the pitching, to me, is going to be fascinating. You could have Connor Nolan and Zebulon Vermillion and Peyton Pallett. You could have all three of those, or maybe you could have none of those if they eventually do find something wrong with his elbow. And if Nolan and Vermillion get offers they can't turn down to sign professional contracts. So they've got a lot of work to do to get the roster together. And, Jackson Wiggins will be back after his Team USA stint. They're going to groom him to now be a starter, and I think they like his approach that way better. So Dave thinks that they're going to be a quality team. They're going to be right in the mix, but a lot of work's going to go into putting this roster together.
Last one here on baseball, or at least for me. Let's go a little deeper on the challenges, just the timing of the draft and the high school signees and whether or not they're going to come to college or go pro. And I know he went a little bit on that yesterday, and just give us your thoughts on kind of what he had to say about, just the challenges that creates for them in roster construction. He mentioned JUCO players yesterday, which has not been, at least in recent years. They've had a few players from JUCO, but that hadn't been their primary source. And now you got the transfer portal more prominent. But the timing of the draft is a big difference this year.
He did go into it, and his frustration was evident that they moved it to coincide kind of with the All-Star break to make this some big festivity. And as he pointed out, when MLB people get the chance at the All-Star break, they go out and hang with their family and go fishing or just, really decompress for 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And now there's going to be a draft. And he said that they obviously didn't think about Division I coaches who are all doing what Dave Van Horn is doing, which is trying to figure out who's coming back and who's not. And he says basically after that draft, it's going to be a rush, lining up who gets contracts they can't turn down and is gone, and who comes back. And so it's a more compressed time frame than they're used to dealing with. So mid-July to late July is going to be a frantic situation for all these D1 coaches.
Tom, congrats on your Hawks' first win last night in Milwaukee. Hopefully they win that Eastern Conference Finals, and you get to see Trae Young and company compete for a championship, man.
They just don't care. I mean, they just doesn't matter if they're down big or what. They make game-winning plays, and they're not a star-laden roster at all. I mean, you look at them and go, how are they doing this? Capella inside is helpful. They got some shooters with Huerter and Bogdanovich, and then Trae Young doing his stuff. They're fun to watch. It's going to be interesting, though. The Bucks are a heavy favorite.
All right, Tom. Well, best of luck then. We'll talk on Monday, okay?
Sounds good. See y'all.